As far as injuries are concerned, Byron Young will be a DNP, but that's kind of par for how we've done it. He should be good for the game. Devontae will be full. Darius Williams will be a DNP. He's going to be doubtful for the game. That lower half is just not kind of turning over, and so I think it's going to be the smart thing for him that most likely he won't make it till Sunday, and then we'll revisit and see how he is next week, but he'll be doubtful. Puna will be limited. Other than that, expect he'll be listed as questionable, but expect him to be ready to go.
You expect to activate Tutu?
I do not.
Coach, can you talk about the way Xavier and Jordan has played on special teams?
They've done a great job. They've made roles for themselves. I think it's really good, Dennis, to be able to see receivers be able to contribute in a lot of the roles that you maybe ask of some of your back end DBs. Those guys can play gunner. They're obviously both good return men. Both at the kick return spot, and then Xavier as a punt returner. They can play on some different phases, and then they've obviously been really good contributors as receivers. So very valuable, high character guys. They're our kind of guys. We love them.
Kyren is your Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. What have you seen from him that kind of makes him a good candidate?
A heart for others. I think he's a great candidate, and I think, he's very deserving of it. I think he understands what a blessing it is to have earned the platform that he has and then be able to give back. And I think we've got a lot of guys that epitomize, being able to use, this blessing that they've earned to be a blessing to others. And he certainly has been a guy that represents that in the way that not only some of the different things that he does off the field, but just how he handles himself. It's why everybody that's been around the guy loves him. He's got a heart for other people. You just see what family means to him, his faith, how he interacts, and responds to everything that's thrown at him. And so was really happy for Kyren. There's a lot of very well-deserving candidates on our team, but certainly he is, more than deserving of it, and really happy for Kyren and all the good things and all the blessings that have come his way because of just how he moves on a daily basis.
What does it do for your culture when a guy like that's also a big-time player on the field and also a captain and just kind of has that total package?
Means a lot, Nate. I think, and I think you guys would agree with me on this. When you look at our locker room, it's just sprinkled with, it might be different personalities, but they are all high-character individuals. They treat people the right way. They've been raised the right way. They've been around people that have influenced and affected them in a positive way, and then they do the same to others. And so it's really fun. It's great to be around a group of people and a group of men that inspire you to want to be better. And, whether it's Kyren or whether it's, you name them, these guys, they all influence each other in a positive way. And I think you become the company you keep. And the way that these guys, just handle themselves, whether it's staying humble in the good things or whether it's, handling setbacks or using their platform like we talked about with Kyren, it's a big deal. And I think in a lot of instances, too, those players that are, some of your best leaders, your biggest producers, when they're the ones modeling the way, that just becomes the standard for everything else. I've talked about it before. My grandpa was so willing to share and had such a wisdom about himself, but I think one of the things that they had right that I think we've tried to replicate and done a pretty good job of here when he was with the Niners is, the players that are in those leadership roles are your best players. They're the example of, seen is better than said. That's what it really looks like. And then everybody else kind of seems to fall in line and really be inspired to want to do that, because you see what it looks like to just move in a way that just feels different, and it's the right way to be able to go about it. And we got a lot of guys that do that.
How do you remember Kyren had actually said something and how important it was that you reached out to him or you texted him during the Cowboys game, or not game practice, and how much when he got that contract, what it meant to him that you believed in him even when you didn't know what you were going to expect out of him. How much for you as a coach and also as an example for other players does that mean to you, or how the culture is around you?
Sure. Yeah, I think the most important thing is to try to be consistent, but be there for people. You hear it said before, people don't care how much that you know until they know how much you care. And I love Kyren, and I love our players, and I love the people that I get a chance to be able to work with. And I think it's important to have, good dialogue. I think if you're just being honest with yourself, whether it's through contract disputes, through challenging, circumstances, when you try to be able to reflect on who do you want to be and how do you want to use what a blessing it is to be in the position that I'm in to influence and affect in a positive way, how do you consistently do that? How do you really try to be transformational and not just transactional? And when you're around people like that, it's easy, but there's a lot of growing up that I've had to do, and by no means have I got it all figured out, but you never regret being there for somebody, or being consistent with your communication, or when you really mean it, being able to tell people I believe in you and what that does. And I know I feel that way when people do that to me, and so when I can authentically be able to give it back to people, I try to use those opportunities as much as possible.
How do you see BY and Jared play off each other, not just on the field, but their personalities as well?
You know what? I think they both have just a great zest for playing this game. They obviously enjoy messing around with each other, and I think they're a really good example. We always talk about walking that fine line of the urgency but the enjoyment, and I think they do a great job of that. I think there's a lot of selflessness, a lot of love for celebrating each other's successes. Even I can think about, as you're asking me about it, even in the post-game locker room after we won against Jacksonville in London, and they got their arm around each other. They're like stepbrothers with each other, and they are really good football players that I think have nice complementary skill sets, but they love and care about each other. I think Joe Coniglio does such a great job setting the temperature, the tone for that room, giving guys the freedom to be themselves, but also having the structure of continuously challenging and pushing them to be who they want to be as players and as men. But I love those two guys, and I love watching how authentic and real their relationship and support of one another is, and they go at each other too in a good way as well.
Joe said that
Who's this?
Joe said during the offseason he wanted to make sure a way that they could still have their personalities on display, but also giving them more like structured ways during plays and those earned ops.
Yep.
What did you see about his growth as a coach during the offseason and kind of how he approached that?
Well, I think one of the great things about Joe is anybody that's great at what they're doing, they're constant learners, they're continuously improving. And, he wants feedback. He wants to be able to see, how can I help these guys reach and realize their highest potential? It's not one thing to be able to see all the great things that BY's done or the things that Verse has done. It's, all right, how can I continuously push the envelope, ultimately geared towards helping them, shine the light on those guys. And that's what makes Joe a great coach. But I think it's also important, do your 111th. We always talk about football being the greatest team sport that there is. And I think when players have a clarity of, all right, what's the intent of this call that Chris is making or that we're making as a defensive staff? Where are my play ops? What am I responsible for? And then where are some of the opportunities where maybe I'm setting somebody else up? And I think he's done a great job of being able to create an ownership for those guys, but a clarity of what the expectations are, so then you can give feedback and they're secure enough to be able to receive it in a great way, and that's what makes Joe a great coach.
Sean, we were asking you last week about Chris Shula. In terms of Mike LaFleur, do you think he's ready for another opportunity as a play caller somewhere, or possibly as a head coach?
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, Mike could call plays, here, and shoot, maybe he will. He's he does a great job. I can't say enough about, really Mike and our offensive staff. Mike sets up all the game plans, does a great job with the installations, got a great presence in front of the room. He's got a great ability to be able to communicate, to connect. He's a great listener so that he can really understand. I think what both he and Chris do a great job of is they empower their assistants, because, man, we got a really special group of people, and those guys are in, leadership roles, but they use the strength of our staff to be able to collaborate, have great communication, and put together good plans. I think Mike did an excellent job with the opportunities that I've seen, whether it be here or other places. And, he can go as far as that he wants. And, he'll break my heart like everybody else and end up leaving me. But no, I love what Mike's done, all kidding aside. He's absolutely more than capable of doing those things right now at a very high level. And I wouldn't, there would be zero hesitation if he did that for us at some point.
Could you ever envision a day where you would give up play calling duties full time?
I don't necessarily know if I look at it as giving up. I that's a part of it that I love, and I've always enjoyed that. But I think, your job as a head coach is to be able to say, okay, where am I needed the most? And also being able to delegate and use the strengths of your group. And I think we've got, I think Mike's one of them. I think we've got a couple people that are more than capable. And play calling is always collaborative. Just because I'm the one sending it in, there's a lot of times that you've seen a great play call that probably wasn't my idea. It was maybe Mike's suggestion or one of the other coaches. So it's always collaborative. And then the bad calls are never mine. But no, I've had a lot of those ones too, Gary, unfortunately. But I do think that he's absolutely capable of it. And I think for me, I really think, whatever my job is to be what's required based on that year, that week. And if there's some fluidity to it, and I probably would have said never before, but I love doing it. But there might be a time that's unforeseen that you say, hey, it might be better to be able to, lean one way or the other, or spend a little bit more time in some other places. And if that's the case, because you have such a strong group, then that's what we would do.
Sean, there's a lot of playoff seeding talk going on. How do you keep the players focused on this next game?
You just talk about being present. I'm not naive to the fact that every time you flip on NFL Network or ESPN, or you're watching games even last night and it pops up, so our guys see it, but I think they're also smart enough and humble enough to know that none of it really matters. We've got to be able to take care of our business. We got to have a great Friday, a good above the neck day tomorrow, and then go travel and let's go cut it loose and try to be able to get the win this week. And that's really all that matters. But I think it's it's something that you're aware of, but it doesn't move the needle for us at all, because all we can do is be totally and completely present.
Just to clarify, is Byron dealing with an injury, or is this just a rest?
Just managing. We've just been kind of managing. He's had some soreness as you accumulate, just the normal season's workload, and he's played a bunch of snaps. And so just kind of managing him with the typical bumps and bruises that guys go through, and being a little bit more, smart with him than anything else.